using that information for advertising the way Facebook does. But what's in common to those three companies, like let's take Google for example. Before Google existed, there were advertisers, there were consumers, and there were publishers. And the publishers wanted the advertising dollar and the consumers' eyeballs. The consumers wanted the products from the advertisers wanted the money from the consumers, and the consumers wanted the content from the publishers. Right? You see all those value exchanges were already in place. In other words, the desire to give and get value was already in place from all of those people. And then Google created a search engine that collected all the consumers in one place and gave them the highest quality content. So if you search for something, you get the top 10 best results. That was their goal. So you get the highest quality content. So they basically said, to the consumers, they said, we're going to provide an environment where you can get more of the value that you want from the publishers. And then they went to the advertisers and said, we've created an environment where you can target exactly the consumers that you want. So you can get more of the value you want to the consumers and then to the advertisers. And they went to the publishers and said, well, because we've created this search and you can create more targeted ad campaigns, you can actually get more value from the advertisers than you could if you went directly. And so they created a system where everybody gets to give and gets to get more value with each other because the system or the venue is there. And it grew like wildfire. Because once you've done that, once you've created a cycle of value where third parties are wanting to exchange value with each other, then all of their desire collectively to get value, to get what they want, all of their desire to get what they want drives growth of your business versus just the consumer's desire in your own. It's huge, it's huge. So another example that's a little less internet-based is a bar. So most bars are a venue for third parties to exchange value. And in this case, the third parties are single men and women. So what you do is you create a venue where the single men and women can come and exchange value with each other. Right? The men want the women want the men. And then you get creative about, well, what are the barriers to that value exchange? Well, one of the big barriers to value exchange between single men and women is inhibition. So what could we do, what could we introduce into the system to reduce the barrier to value exchange? Alcohol. So now we create a venue for third-party value exchange and we introduce into the system something that reduces the barriers to value exchange. And then if you're a bar owner and you understand that, if it's that kind of bar, I know that there are different kinds of bars, different kinds of values being exchanged, but let's say it's that kind of bar. If you're a bar owner and you understand that, then all your decisions about what kind of lighting, how you paint it, what kind of alcohol do you serve, what the prices are, what the decor is, how you advertise, all your decisions should be focused on reducing the barriers to value exchange between the people there. And if you do that, you're going to have a successful bar. Wildly successful. Which is one of the reasons why bars are so much more profitable than restaurants, is because very few restaurants allow customers to exchange value with each other, and bars do. It's not just that, alcohol is more profitable. It's because of that value exchange. Because when you go to a restaurant, for example, you drink a lot less than if you go to a bar. So it's not the profit, it's the function, right? So just some models for how to do this. One thing you might do is you might look at all the people or all the parties that surround your business. So customers, obviously, yourself, competitors, suppliers, vendors. If you are not selling to the end customer, then the OEM manufacturers, or who, if you're reselling, it's the manufacturers, the designers of the products themselves that you're reselling. So you make a list of all of the people involved, and those people are already trying to exchange value. And then you can list next to the people what do they really want, what would make their day, and what are their assets, what do they have to offer. And then you can start to draw lines. Oh, I see, this group actually wants what that group has, and this group wants what that group. And as soon as you have a triangle between three groups, you've got the potential for creating a venue. And then the question is, all right, well, from my position, what's everything I could do to lower the barrier to that value exchange and increase it, create some kind of an environment. So, you might create a back-end system where vendors and distributors, or manufacturers and distributors, can get more accurate information about what's selling and do promotions and do cross promotions. And so, before this talk, you might have had a retail store, and after this talk, you've got a opportunity for increasing the group intelligence of the manufacturers and distributors in your industry. Which maybe to begin with, you do in Microsoft Excel. It doesn't have to be a big software project that you invest a lot of money in. It's just creating that venue. This right now is an example of this, right? BAS knows that they can create a certain amount of value by talking to you individually, but they can create way more value if they get all of you in a room together, so you could perhaps exchange value with each other, give each other advice, support ideas, and then get me here. And I get value from being here, like I was saying earlier. You guys get value from me being here. So now BAS has created this whole venue where all this value exchange is possible. And then their value in the community, their value that they're providing, increases as a result. You guys see all that? Okay. So number 5, be flexible with your identity, but not with your values. Identity is an interesting one. So your identity is who you think you are that you're not. That's kind of the definition of an identity. An identity is who you think you are, but you're not. And I'll give you an example. So while you're driving, you create an identity where you think you're your car. And if I said, hey, do you think you are your car, you'd say, no, that's silly. However, if someone cuts in front of you on the road, you say, they cut me off. They don't say, they cut off my car. And if you're in an accident and someone hits you or rear ends you, you say, they rear-ended me, not they rear-ended my bumper. And the reason why you say that is because while you're driving, you think you're your car. Like when you pass a parking space, you might say, can I fit into that space? Can I fit? Right? And it's almost you feel it's you. So that's an example of an identity, something you think you are, but you're not. And if you've ever been in a serious car wreck, the process of being in a serious car wreck is, assuming that it's one that you saw coming a few seconds before, is you see that stuff's going down. This is happening. And you get scared, and a part of you thinks you're going to die. Even if it's not a super fast one, you have that panic. Part of you thinks you're going to die. The part of you that thinks you're going to die is the part of you that's identified with the car. And then if the car gets totaled and you get out, you separate from the car, and you breathe for a second, you realize you didn't die, you disidentify, and you go, wow, that car is wrecked. That car is totaled. You don't, an hour after the car wreck, you don't go, I'm totaled, right? That, you disidentify. So the same process happens anytime you're going to mess with your identity, who you think you are, but you're not. You think you're going to die, and then you realize you didn't, and then you realize you're not that thing. So one of the things that you all are identified with, one of the things that you think you are but you're not, is what you do. You think that what you do is who you are. And I don't mean in the general sense even necessarily like I'm a carpenter or I'm a plumber, but I mean the literal actions you take throughout the day. So if you think about, what does your business rely on from you? What are the 10 or 15 things that you have to do to keep it running? You make a list of those things. If I told you to stop doing those things, you'd have the identical reaction that you do right before the car wreck, which is part of you thinks you're going to die if you don't do those things. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not really. A part of you is concerned that the business won't succeed or go out of business, and it has that same kind of feeling as you're about to be wrecked. And it has that feeling because you're identified with those things, like you're supposed to be doing them. So strategic geniuses don't identify with what they do. They're totally flexible. They can change their whole idea of what they do. This might be famous. I can't remember. There was a book that quoted this, and I can't remember the book. I apologize. But McDonald's, when you ask the CEO of McDonald's, what business are you in? Do you know the answer? What business is McDonald's in? Real estate. Exactly. They're in the real estate business. And the whole hamburger thing is just their mechanism for acquiring the best real estate in the country, all the corners. And the minute they figure out something more profitable than hamburgers to sell in those spots, they'll do that. So they say. That's an example of not being identified with what you do, selling hamburgers, but identified with what you've built or what you have or what your assets are, the real estate itself. A number of years ago, there was a discussion at Southern Pacific Railroad. And Southern Pacific Railroad, at the executive level, they were saying, geez, guys, seems like the railroad business is ending. I don't know how long we're going to pretend that we can make a future out of the railroad business, but it's pretty much it. We have to figure something else out. And my father was a part of these discussions, and what they did was, instead of thinking that they were in the transportation business or the railroad business like Amtrak, they said, well, what do we have? What are we good at? What are we capable of? And what do we have? And one of the things they had was a lot of very long, very skinny real estate. And so they thought, well, what can we do with a lot of very long, very skinny real estate? And they decided that they would start a long-distance company. It's right at the time of deregulation. So if you've got a long, skinny piece of real estate that connects two cities, that's actually the most expensive part of being a phone company, is running all those cables and getting all the right-of-way. And they already owned all the right-of-way between all the cities. That's a huge advantage. It's a game, really, that only they could win. So there was a policy back in those days that all the subsidiary companies of Southern Pacific Railroad had to start with SP for Southern Pacific, so they started Sprint. And they created the company Sprint to compete with AT&T, which in 3 years or 4 years became the number 2 player, beating out MCI in that industry. And they were able to make that move. If you think about it from an identity of what you do, oh, we're a railroad company. Okay, well, now we're a long-distance company. That's a huge change, a massive change for a company of that size. But it's because they didn't identify with what they did. They identified with what they had. And how can they use that as an advantage to further progress, to further what they want to do? So if you've ever had an idea or someone tells you an idea and you said, oh, but I'm not a blank, I'm a blank. Anyone ever said that? Oh, I don't do that. Well, we don't really do that. Just stop. I'm not saying you have to do every dumb idea that somebody tells you that's outside of what you normally do, but stop and say, well, let me evaluate the idea based on what I have. And does it make sense for someone who has what I have, has the genius and has the assets and has the perspective and has the access? Does it make sense for someone that has what I have to make those decisions to do that? Does that give us an advantage? Versus, oh, I do that or I don't do that. Does that make sense? Okay. So those are the 5 aspects of strategic genius. Those are the 5 guidelines. And what you want to do is apply as many of them as you can to your business. I'm going to go through them once again real quick. Then we'll take a break and then we'll work together a little bit. Does that sound good? So you want to predict nonlinear trends. You want to change customer behavior the least. You want to play a game that only you can win. You want to create a venue where third parties are exchanging value. And you would be flexible with your identity. And if you were to look at what game are you going to play in the next 5 years in your business, if you can make 3 or 4 of these apply to your strategy and say, yep, it's doing that, yep, it's doing that, yep, it's doing that, then 5 years from now, things are going to look very different from you. It's going to be a very different world. One last piece on this last bit here. Jennifer and I do a process every year that I'd recommend for you guys. And it's kind of like zero-based planning, but it's zero-based planning for everything for our life. Zero-based planning is zero-based budgeting is the opposite of what most people do, which is take last year's budget and make an adjustment. Right? Most of your strategies, actually, if you're honest, are leftover strategies by just trying to do what's already been done but different. And that's cutting out your ability to be creative, and you guys are all creative people. So at the end of the year, we stop and we go, okay, what difference did we want to make this year for people? What impact did we want to make on the world? And how do we do on making that or not making it? Based on what we think now and everything that we've learned and where we are and what we feel like, what's the difference that we want to make next year in the world? And it doesn't have to be entrepreneurs. It doesn't have to have anything to do with the past. It's just what feels like the most exciting difference we possibly can make. And when we're asking that question, it's also it's unrestrained by whether we think that's even possible. And the next question is, okay, well, what are the assets we currently have? We have some goodwill. We've got this capability. We've got that capability. And then after that, it's how can we make connections between those assets and making that difference. And then that creates our product strategy and what we do, whether we're going to do speaking in front of groups like this, or building a piece of software, or investing in a biotech company, or getting together a group of 200 of the most successful entrepreneurs to talk about how to end hunger, which we're doing in a month. So it's just what difference we want to make, what do we got, and how do we put those two together? There's an advantage of doing that. It's not just a good business strategy in terms of making more money. It will do that. It will be more successful than if you try to improve on the past. But there's another advantage. I guess I'll say this before the break, which is I've worked with a lot of CEOs who caught the brass ring, who sold their companies for $700 million, $900 million, $2.5 billion. And these CEOs personally got hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, in Silicon Valley, that's winning. I guess in any context. You win. You're 43 years old. You have, $490 million in the bank. And, a wife and a 6-year-old kid. And the most common experience that they have is depression. Depression. And the reason why they have depression is because they were sold a lie. And the lie is that you can sacrifice your life to your business to try to make money and then buy your life back at the end. Now, it doesn't work for a number of reasons. First of all, the people I've been fortunate enough to talk to are the rare ones. Most of us never get that brass ring. So you've sacrificed your life in order to buy it back at the end, but then you don't get the money at the end to buy it back. Or, whatever it is, 1 out of 2,000 entrepreneurs gets that kind of, that lottery winning kind of sum. A lot of us do well, we can get a savings and get by, but that real big win, so few get it. But the ones that do realize that making yourself happy is a skill. It's like staying in shape, or it's like maintaining a marriage or a relationship. You can't sacrifice your marriage for 20 years and then buy it back at the end. Your wife, your husband's going to be very upset, and you're going to have 20 years of hell to pay. Hi, honey, I'm home now. We can be together. Like hell. Excuse my French. So you got to make yourself happy along the way to practice, so that when you do succeed, so that when you do, and I'm not saying that your goals are to make $500 million. Maybe your goals are to make 5 or 10, whatever they are. But when you do reach your goal, which if you get your committee on board with it, that you will, and if you get your committee committed to a strategy that's going to work, you will get there. You guys are executors. But you want to have so much practice making yourself happy that you know how to do that. And it doesn't depend on it. There's a cliche that you can't buy happiness. And when you don't feel like you have the money to buy the things you want, it feels impossible that that's true. And one of the ways that you could discover that trite truism is by earning a lot of money and then not being happy still. But the other way that you could discover it is if you make yourself happy along the way. And when you're asking yourself what difference you want to make, what's going to be different because you were here? How are you going to participate individually in the evolutionary process specifically? When you ask yourself those kinds of questions and then you're putting an earnest effort into doing that, it almost doesn't matter how well you do at it. Every step along the way is gratifying. I'm experiencing gratitude right now in this conversation as we're speaking. Not because I've succeeded in the past, but because I'm doing something I care about, which is helping people. Does that make sense? So make the difference that you want to make. You can. And swing for the fences. Really be creative about applying what you have, what you know, what you can do, your assets, to make that difference. And then you'll be happy all the way along the way. You won't have to wait till the end. And then when you do get the brass ring, when you do reach your goal, you won't be depressed. You'll be empowered. And you'll probably be doing something like me, which is turning around and figure out how to help as many other people do the same thing. All right, so let's do like a 15-minute break. Let me look at the time. It's 10:35. Let's do like a 15-minute break. Can I trust you guys to be on time? Okay, we'll do a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back, and we're going to do something super fun, which is ideally going to scare the pants out of some of you. So let's try that. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so we got a half hour. And basically what I want to do is I want to work with you, and I want to have you guys work with each other. So do we have the other microphone that was up here? Do we have the handheld microphone? I don't know. Hey, Wayne. Okay. Can we have the microphone, the handheld microphone that was up here? Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm Wayne's assistant.
Yeah, got that. Me too. We're all here at Wayne's Doing. So first, I guess I just want to cover a couple questions. Does anyone have a question for me or a question about anything that we covered this morning? If so, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of line up here along the side here. We'll hand you the microphone over here. And if not, then what I want to do is I want to take 2 or 3 people, and I want you to tell me your situation, and we'll try to apply some of these aspects of genius to your situation, and together we'll kind of work on it for a minute and see if we can't give you some ideas that stir things up. Do you want to do that? Okay. So what you want to do is now, if that's you want to get up and you want to walk over here. You can do that any minute. Okay, good. Thank you for the sound effect. That was perfect. It was the exact. No, it's fine. When you ask a question and you don't hear anything back, the expression is you hear crickets, and then you actually supplied literal crickets for me. That was awesome. That's okay. Jennifer would be proud. Okay. So great. We'll have these 4, and then we'll have one chance for you guys to talk to each other. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Fran Folks, and I have Sylvan Learning Center here in Alexandria, so I have a franchise, which kind of puts a slant possibly on some of the things that you said. You alluded to the fact, or you said, that you could, in a 15-minute conversation, tell me the next step that I should take to have the best leverage. How can I get that conversation with you? That's one.
Okay.
And number 2 is third parties coming around what I do. Of course, I'm selling, and I have a customer. We have the education system involved, so that's kind of similar. I guess it's still just binodal. I need some ideas as to how and what I could create additional nodes.
I got some questions. So it's a franchise, meaning that you're the franchisee. Okay, got it. And you said education system. What is that?
Teachers.
Okay, great.
The administrators, the counselors.
And what value do you actually provide? What's the service or product?
I am tutoring students.
Okay.
I communicate with parents. I communicate with teachers.
Got it. And does your franchise license, or does that allow you to do your own kind of marketing? In other words, can you do
limitations?
Okay.
They provide a great deal of the marketing, but they allow me to do some.
Okay. And can you put on events?
Sure.
Okay, great. You're providing tutoring for the teachers now, right? Is the teachers for your students or the students?
I'm providing tutoring for the students.
For the students, great. Okay, cool. So what I think you're going to do is you're going to create a learning event around a particular topic. I worked with a guy who has a tutoring company in New York, and he put on a young entrepreneurs event, right? And so the event went like this. A bunch of students applied. Only the top students made it. It's top 100 that applied. The 100 students went to a 3-day event where those 100 students together formed 4 companies over the course of the weekend that competed with each other for who could make the most revenue by the end of the weekend. And they taught entrepreneurial principles to the students, and then they'd go do the exercises and taught like this. And basically that process created a whole like 1,800 leads for their tutoring company, because it was all the people that applied to come to that thing became the leads. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I would think about doing something like that, where you have an event where the event is themed. I was involved, so it was going to be entrepreneurs, but it should be themed something about you care about, that matters to you, that you think that these kids really need to know about, something that's outside the normal school subjects, so it's interesting. And then they come to the event, and then I'm always a big fan of contests. You have the kids having contests with each other. You can have the teachers have a contest with each other. They could take certain groups and figure out which group is going to succeed at this, that, or the other task, as long as it's all in the context of a greater collaboration with each other. So I would look at events where they're all coming together and exchanging value with each other in an event. Similar to this, but more action-based.